What happens when Hollywood's biggest action star sits down with one of daytime television's most outspoken, unpredictable, and controversial hosts, only for everything to spiral completely off the rails? No one at Studio One A could have predicted the whirlwind that was about to unfold. The tension in the room was thick enough to slice through, even before the cameras started rolling. Vin Diesel, the global icon known for his gravelly voice, stoic intensity, and unmatched command of the action genre, settled into the iconic red chair across from Joy Behar with the calm confidence of a man expecting a routine morning show interview. After all, he had done hundreds of these. A few soft questions, a few laughs, a heartwarming moment about family, then out the door to the next stop on the press tour. But what he received instead was far from routine. In fact, it was an ambush so unexpected, so chaotic, and so charged that it would leave the entire View panel completely stunned and force the producers to intervene with a decision they had never made before. Make sure you're subscribed and ready, because this story isn't just wild. It's the kind of on-air explosion that becomes instant television legend. The morning had begun like any ordinary broadcast day at The View. Joy Behar had arrived earlier than usual, carrying her usual oversized coffee cup, flipping through a stack of printouts as she walked briskly toward her dressing room. Her assistant, who had worked with her long enough to know her moods, immediately sensed something off. Joy wasn't her typical sassy, sarcastic self. Instead, she seemed agitated, restless even. She kept tapping her fingers, glancing at her phone, and muttering under her breath about Hollywood phonies, PR-trained robots, and celebrities who pretend to be authentic while hiding behind carefully curated public images. Her assistant gently asked if everything was okay, but Joy brushed it off with an irritated wave, insisting she was fine, even though she very clearly wasn't. She took long sips of her coffee, flipped through her cards again, and finally muttered, "I'm tired of these sugar-coated interviews. Today, I'm asking real questions." Meanwhile, on the other side of the building, Vin Diesel arrived with his usual quiet, grounded demeanor. Wearing his trademark fitted black T-shirt and dark sunglasses, he walked through the studio halls with relaxed confidence. Vin had been promoting his latest action thriller for weeks, and the stops were all starting to blend together. The View was supposed to be one of the easy ones. Talk a little about the film, tease a few stunts, maybe throw in something heartfelt about his kids or his late friend Paul Walker. Standard morning show material. But what Vin didn't know, what no one knew, was that Joy was in no mood for standard anything. As the opening moments of the live broadcast began, and the show's upbeat theme music filled Studio 1A, Joy's co-hosts took their seats. The camera panned dramatically across the panel, capturing big smiles, cheerful waves, and the typical morning chat, but underneath the polished on-air friendliness, something was bubbling. Joy's co-hosts kept exchanging quick glances at her. Even they could sense that something wasn't quite right. Joy seemed tense, her posture rigid, her jaw tight. She wasn't cracking jokes or teasing the audience like she usually did. She wasn't even smiling. And then the moment arrived. As the applause faded and the camera zoomed in on Joy introducing their special guest, Vin Diesel walked onto the stage and exchanged friendly greetings with the other panelists. But when he turned toward Joy, there was a strange shift in the air, an awkward pause, a flicker of tension that the crowd couldn't put their finger on. Vin sat down, adjusted his mic, and offered a warm smile. But Joy didn't smile back. Instead, she narrowed her eyes, leaned forward in her chair, and asked a question that instantly wiped the smile off every face on set. "What are you really trying to prove, Vin?" she said, her tone sharp. "Because every time you walk onto one of these sets, it feels like you're playing a character, not just in your movies, but in real life too." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators froze. Vin blinked, thrown completely off guard. I'm not sure what you mean," he said carefully. "I'm here to talk about the film, Joy. We're talking action, storytelling, family." But Joy cut him off. "That's the thing, the family line, the tough guy persona, the deep voice, the sunglasses, the whole package. Don't you ever get tired of pretending?" Gasps rippled through the audience. Vin shifted in his seat, clearly trying to keep his composure. He gave a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Joy, I don't pretend to be anything. What you see is what you get. But Joy wasn't done. Her voice grew sharper. Come on, Vin. Everyone in Hollywood has a PR-polished persona. You guys come in here selling authenticity, telling us how real you are, but everything is scripted. Everything is manufactured. So tell me, what's really real about Vin Diesel? The other co-hosts looked horrified. One tried to interrupt. Another mouthed stop. Even the producers in the control room started panicking, but Joy kept going. Vin took a slow breath, visibly calming himself before responding. His voice remained steady, but there was an unmistakable edge now. Joy, I've worked in this business for decades. I've earned everything I have, and if you think you can reduce my entire life or career to some conspiracy about image— Joy interrupted again, raising her voice. That's exactly what I'm doing. The audience gasped again, and that's when it happened. The moment that forced producers to cut to an emergency commercial break. The first time in the show's history they used that specific procedure mid-interview. Vin leaned forward, looked Joy directly in the eyes, and said in a perfectly calm but undeniably powerful tone, "If you wanted a fight, Joy, you should have warned me. I came here in good faith. You chose to disrespect me." The entire panel froze. Before anyone could speak, the director's voice echoed through the studio speakers. Cut to commercial. Cut now. The screen faded to black, and what happened off camera even crazier. As the pleasantries continued between the hosts and the studio audience, the familiar rhythm of the view seemed to settle in place. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed viewers with her signature warmth, her tone calm, her presence grounding, immediately creating that sense of comfort and connection that had made her a beloved figure in daytime television for years. Beside her, the other panelists slipped into their morning roles with practiced ease, preparing for what they believed would be yet another predictable episode filled with celebrity chatter, humorous takes on trending topics, and the occasional playful debate. The energy in the studio that morning was light, breezy, conversational. Exactly the kind of atmosphere that had made The View a morning staple for more than 2 decades. From the outside, everything appeared normal. The audience clapped, the co-hosts smiled, and the cameras glided effortlessly from one panelist to the next, as they transitioned from their opening discussion into the introduction of the day's special guest. But under the surface, beneath the polished cameras, the soft studio lighting, and the polite applause, there was a shift happening, a subtle tightening, a ripple of tension that only those closest to the stage could sense. And it started with Joy Behar. When it came time to introduce their guest, Joy's voice carried an edge that long-time viewers might have dismissed as her usual sarcasm, but the production crew, people who saw her every single day, caught it instantly. It was sharper, cooler, and it didn't match the easygoing vibe the rest of the panel was projecting. She straightened her note cards, glanced at Vin Diesel's name in bold letters, then looked up at the audience with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Our next guest," she began, pausing just long enough for the silence to feel intentional, "is Vin Diesel. He's here to talk about his new movie, and supposedly his real life, though." She let out a dry, almost dismissive laugh. "We'll see about that." The room reacted in 2 distinct layers. The audience, unaware of the brewing tension, laughed politely, thinking this was just Joy being Joy. After all, her blunt humor had been part of the show's DNA for years. But the other co-hosts, they looked at each other with raised eyebrows and exchanged quiet, questioning glances. Something was off, very off, but none of them knew exactly what had caused the shift in Joy's attitude or what she was planning. For a moment, even Whoopi looked slightly stunned. Her eyes narrowed in Joy's direction before she forced a small, controlled smile for the cameras. Still, before anyone could address the sudden tonal change, the studio doors opened and Vin Diesel made his entrance. He walked onto the set with his trademark confident stride, the kind of grounded, powerful presence that instantly commands attention. Wearing a sleek, fitted black shirt and perfectly polished boots, he looked every bit the Hollywood superstar fans adored. The audience erupted in applause as he stepped forward, flashing his $1 million smile, the same one that had graced red carpets, magazine covers, and blockbuster premieres for more than 20 years. He waved, nodded, and offered a modest thank you to the cheering crowd before taking his seat across from Joy. But the moment Vin sat down, the energy in the room tightened again. The air around the table felt electric, charged in a way that no one had anticipated. From his chair, Vin gave a polite nod toward the entire panel. His demeanor was calm, respectful, exactly what producers expected from one of Hollywood's biggest names. But as he turned toward Joy to greet her directly, he noticed the tension. Her posture was stiff, her eyes were locked onto him, not with curiosity or warmth, but with something sharper, something more confrontational. Vin, ever the professional, extended a hand. "It's great to be here," he said warmly. Joy shook his hand, but the smile on her face faltered for a fraction of a second. It was the kind of micro-expression people miss unless they're watching closely. The co-hosts saw it. The floor manager noticed it. Even Vin's expression shifted ever so slightly, as if he, too, sensed that something wasn't quite right. She released his hand and leaned back in her chair, flipping her note cards casually, but not casually enough to hide the tension in her fingers. "We're glad you could make it," she said, her voice calm but carrying a hidden bite. "We've got plenty to talk about today." The audience laughed politely again, assuming she was setting up a playful segment. But Vin's instincts, sharpened over decades of interviews, both friendly and hostile, told him this wasn't playful. This was something else. Joy continued, "So tell us, Vin, you've got this big new movie coming out. Lots of explosions, lots of stunts, lots of, well, everything you're known for." Vin nodded. "Absolutely. It's a film we're really proud of. We put our hearts into it. The action's incredible, but there's also a really strong emotional story that fans are going to." Joy cut him off, her voice slicing through his sentence like a blade. Sure, emotional, right?" She raised an eyebrow, "but the real question is, how much of what you bring to the screen is actually you?" A visible ripple of discomfort spread across the table. One co-host shifted uncomfortably. Another gave Joy a subtle, warning glance. Even Whoopi's eyes widened slightly, as if silently asking, "What are you doing?" Vin's smile softened, but his eyes hardened in the way only someone who's been blindsided can manage. "What do you mean by that?" he asked carefully. Joy shrugged in an exaggerated way, spreading her hands. "Come on, Vin. You talk about family all the time. You always play the tough guy. The deep voice, the stare, the whole thing. So I'm asking, how much of that is real, and how much is Hollywood PR?" The studio fell silent. A tension-filled hush washed over the room. The director and the control booth leaned forward. The producers exchanged panicked whispers, and Vin, well, he sat there, his expression shifting from surprise to something much stronger. He was done playing nice. The audience erupted in enthusiastic applause the moment Vin Diesel walked onto the stage. People in the front rows stood up, cheering and waving, thrilled to see one of Hollywood's most iconic action stars in person. Vin, dressed in a casually stylish outfit, dark jeans, a fitted charcoal t-shirt, and a sleek leather jacket, looked every bit the accessible movie star he had built his career around. It was that carefully balanced blend of charismatic superstar and down-to-earth everyman that had made him a fan favorite across multiple generations. As Vin approached the iconic guest chair, he gave a few playful fist bumps to audience members, smiled for the scattered phone cameras, and nodded in appreciation at the loud, excited murmurs moving through the studio. Sitting down, he leaned forward slightly and extended his hand toward Joy with genuine warmth. "Thanks for having me on the show, Joy," he said, his deep, gravelly voice instantly recognizable. "It's always great to be here with you ladies." The tone of his greeting was open, friendly, and sincere. He clearly believed this was going to be just another morning show interview, a relaxed conversation full of light jokes, movie talk, and maybe a heartwarming anecdote or two. Vin leaned back comfortably in his chair, settling in with the ease of someone who had done hundreds of interviews just like this. Meanwhile, the studio audience was still buzzing with energy. Rows of people whispered excitedly, held up their phones to snap photos, and nudged each other as they prepared for the interview to unfold. After all, this was Vin Diesel, global star, action icon, symbol of cinematic loyalty and brotherhood. Everyone expected the segment to be high energy and fun. Everyone except Joy. Her response came instantly, and it wasn't warm, playful, or even neutral. Well, she said, her voice dripping with a sarcasm so sharp it cut through the air like a blade. A look who decided to grace us with his presence. The audience's applause died down faster than usual, their excitement shifting into a tense, uncertain quiet. Several heads turned toward Joy, wondering if she was joking, riffing, or starting some sort of humorous bit. But her expression said otherwise. Her smile was tight and artificial, her posture stiff, her eyes locked onto Vin with a confrontational glint. Then she delivered the line that turned the entire studio upside down. "Tell me, Vin," she said, leaning forward with an almost predatory calm, "do you actually believe all the tough guy nonsense you sell to your fans? Or is that just part of the act?" The room froze. Every ounce of warmth, joy, and audience excitement evaporated in a single moment, leaving the studio filled with a suffocating tension no one knew how to handle. Gasps echoed softly from the crowd. A few people exchanged confused looks. Others silently mouthed, "What is happening?" Vin blinked, stunned. The co-hosts on either side of Joy shifted in their chairs uncomfortably. One of them shot Joy a subtle glare. Another quickly glanced toward the producers, who were already moving closer to the edge of the set, sensing trouble. Vin tried to maintain his composure, but the shock was visible. He sat up straighter, the easygoing smile slipping from his face. I'm not sure what you mean," he said carefully, his tone calm but edged with disbelief. "I'm here to talk about the film, Joy, and to say hi to the fans, that's all." Joy didn't let him finish. "Oh, come on," she said, scoffing loudly. "You talk about family in every interview. You walk around with that deep voice, that intense stare. So tell us, are you actually like that, or is it all made up?" The audience murmured again, this time with discomfort rather than excitement. What should have been an upbeat fan moment was quickly turning into something far more hostile. Vin's jaw tightened ever so slightly. With a calmness that bordered on icy control, he replied, "Joy, I've been in this industry for a long time. I put everything I have into my work, and I'm proud of the connection I have with my fans." Joy waved her hand dismissively. Yeah, you're proud, you're grateful, you're humble. We've heard it all before." She leaned in closer, her tone dropping to a sharp, cutting whisper that was still loud enough for the microphones to catch. "But I want the truth, not the Vin Diesel trademark version, the real one." A stunned silence swallowed the room. At that moment, even Whoopi Goldberg, veteran host, unshakable present, shifted in her seat, her expression somewhere between confusion and disbelief. She opened her mouth slightly as if considering whether to intervene, but Joy continued before anyone else could jump in. "So go on," she said, folding her arms. "Tell us who you really are behind all the muscle, flexing hero stuff. Or is this," she gestured at him in an exaggerated sweep, "just one big performance?" Vin inhaled slowly, visibly bracing himself. The muscles in his jaw clenched. His eyes, normally calm and warm during interviews, sharpened into something more focused, something dangerously close to anger. "Joy," he said quietly, but firmly enough that the microphone caught every syllable, "I came here in good faith to share my work with your audience, not to get ambushed." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. One co-host closed her eyes in embarrassment. Another sighed audibly. The producers, now fully alert, hovered near the edge of the stage, whispering frantically into headsets. Joy only smiled, coldly. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said. "I'm just asking questions your fans deserve to hear." Vin leaned in slightly, matching her energy with a calm but unmistakably threatening intensity. "You're not asking questions," he said. "You're picking a fight." The audience gasped again. Someone in the back whispered loudly, "Oh my God." And that's right, there was the moment the tension in the studio became unbearable. The moment that forced producers to step in. The moment the interview broke apart. The words hit the air like a physical slap, sharp enough to silence the entire studio in an instant. Joy's accusation didn't just interrupt the flow of the interview, it shattered it completely. The previously buzzing audience, still riding the excitement of seeing a Hollywood icon up close, fell into an uneasy quiet. Enthusiastic chatter dissolved into confused murmurs as people looked around, trying to understand whether Joy was joking, or whether something was seriously wrong. Vin's friendly expression wavered for a fraction of a second. His smile, so natural and effortless just moments before, faded ever so slightly as the weight of Joy's words sank in. He straightened in his seat, his shoulders tightening, his posture shifting from relaxed confidence to quiet alertness. "I'm sorry," he said, keeping his tone calm despite the tension rising around him. "What exactly are you getting at here?" His voice remained composed, but the stiffness in his body was impossible to miss. Even the audience, even those far from the stage, noticed the sudden change. Vin glanced toward Whoopi and the other hosts, his eyes searching for clarity, or perhaps a signal, that this was some planned segment he hadn't been warned about. But the co-hosts looked just as confused as he was. Whoopi raised her eyebrows, one host subtly shook her head, another pressed her lips together, silently urging Joy to ease up. But Joy didn't ease up. If anything, she leaned further into the confrontation. The cameras captured every nuance, the tightening of Vin's jaw, the way his fingers curled slightly around the armrests, the flicker of frustration in his eyes. Every micro-expression was broadcast live to millions of viewers. Joy leaned forward, her elbows resting on the table, her voice dropping into a tone that felt less like interviewing and more like interrogation. "You've built your entire career," she said, drawing out each word with deliberate intensity, "on this family man, tough guy image. But let's be honest, we all know that's just holly, wood smoke and mirrors." A few soft gasps rippled through the audience. Joy continued, her stare unbreaking. "So tell us, Vin, what are you really like when the cameras aren't rolling and you don't have a script to follow? Who are you when you're not performing for the world?" Her voice carried a sharpness so pointed that several audience members actually shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the hostility radiating from her side of the table. The accusation hung heavy in the studio air like a challenge, a direct attack wrapped in a deceptively casual question. Vin's jaw clenched visibly. He inhaled slowly, controlling his reaction, trying to stay grounded. The calm, collected exterior he was known for was beginning to crack, revealing the frustration building underneath. "Listen, Joy," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "I came here to talk about my work, and maybe share a few stories with your audience. That's it. I don't know what kind of interview you think this is, but I'm the same person whether the cameras are on or off." He leaned slightly forward, meeting her stare with equal intensity. "That's not an act. That's not a script. That's just who I am." His response was measured, firm, and respectful, but there was no mistaking the edge in his tone. The laid-back action star, the calm media professional, the patient interview guest. He was there, but his patience was wearing thin, and everyone in the studio felt it. But Joy wasn't finished, not even close. She let out a short, dismissive laugh. "Oh, please," she snapped, waving a hand dramatically. "Spare me the authentic act." Her voice rose slightly, enough to convey irritation, enough to shift the mood from playful banter to open challenge. "Do you really think," she continued, "that we're all just going to sit here and pretend your entire persona isn't carefully manufactured by publicists and image consultants?" Another wave of uncomfortable murmurs swept through the audience. Even the crew members standing at the edges of the studio shifted awkwardly. Joy pressed on. "The family values," she said, ticking her fingers as if listing items on a menu. "The brotherhood with your co-stars. The whole humble guy from New York routine." She leaned back, folding her arms tightly. "It's all just marketing, isn't it?" The last sentence hit the room like an explosion. A hush fell over the studio, so deep that even the lights seemed to buzz louder. The co-hosts looked stunned. One of them actually mouthed something that looked a lot like "What are you doing?" Another ran her hand across her forehead in exasperation. Vin blinked once, then twice. His face hardened. The friendliness, the warmth, the easy charm, gone, replaced by a colder, more serious expression he rarely showed on camera. He leaned forward just slightly, enough to close the distance between him and Joy, his voice calm but powerful. "You know," he said, "I've dealt with a lot of difficult interviews in my life, but I've never had someone question my integrity like this." Joy opened her mouth to interrupt, but Vin kept going. "I've never pretended to be anything other than who I am. I've shared my family story, my struggles, my life, because they matter to me, because they're real." He nodded slowly, his eyes locked onto hers. "And because the people who watch my films deserve honesty, not whatever this is." The audience erupted, not in applause, but in a collective sound of shock and disbelief. A deep murmur rolled through the seats as viewers realized this wasn't a scripted moment. This wasn't a staged argument. This was real, raw, live, and spiraling fast. The tension was so thick you could almost feel it pressing against your skin. And Joy, she just smiled. A small, cold, victorious smile, because she knew exactly what she was doing.